Hello and welcome to today's update. It is Thursday, November 21st, 2024. It's a rainy day here in Eastern Pennsylvania, and I'm so happy and grateful for that. It has been particularly dry in this part of the country, and I think we needed some rain, and we're finally getting it. So I'm happy about that. I'm not so happy to see that shares of Bitfarms are trading lower today, although I'm somewhat consoled by the fact that based on the coverage universe of publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies whose share prices I follow, we are in good company. The entire sector practically, with the exception of Marathon, is down today. And, the market's going to close in about 8 or so minutes. So what does this all mean, right? Like, how can it be that the price of Bitcoin is surging ahead towards $100,000 a coin? And yet you have, publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies, right? Most of them, the overwhelming majority of them, not really doing anything in terms of their stock price performance. So in the case of Marathon, I think a big factor is their hodl, right? What are they up to now? Like 25, 26, 27,000 Bitcoin? That's a fairly significant hodl. If I'm not mistaken, they are in fact the largest hodl amongst, the major publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies. So it makes perfect sense that shares of Marathon would trade, even more so in sympathy with the price of Bitcoin. But let's kind of keep it real too. I mean, if you've been following Marathon stock price, they haven't necessarily just been going straight up into the moon, right? I mean, they kind of they topped off at like $25 a share recently. Then they backtracked all the way to like 18, 19 bucks a share. Again, maybe 20 actually. I don't follow them super precisely, but my point is it hasn't just been straight up and to the right? The stock has kind of recalibrated a bit, but it does seem to be now, moving more in sympathy with the price of Bitcoin a bit more consistently. We'll see if that consistency lasts through the remainder of this week and into next week. But somebody raised a good point in the comments, right? And I want to just highlight this, that Bitfarms, and again, I'm going to try to keep this fairly generic sounding because I'm still bringing myself up to speed as to all the details of the company. And I want to just give Bitfarms the benefit of the doubt here, okay? But it does seem as if, though, some longer-term Bitfarms shareholders feel disappointed. And I understand that, Ben has only been in the top job since, I think, July or so. It's a process, right, to acclimate oneself into that position, to affect change of any kind. Oftentimes, it's not an overnight process. But I'm gathering from some of the feedback I'm getting that there is a brewing a bit of frustration with the operations of this company and a bit of frustration just with the fact that it feels as if though there's not a whole lot of clarity about what the future of this company really holds. Now, to be fair, again, I want to give Bitfarms, a lot of benefit of the doubt here because listen, it's really tough to focus on operations, right, when you're also having to deal with another company wanting to, buy you and putting an offer in, and suddenly you're needing to focus on that. And it can be a little bit distracting to deal with all those different things. Now, I think most of the Bitfarms shareholders who I've interacted with are absolutely unequivocally united in saying that $2.30 a share, was that roughly what Riot was offering, give or take a bit? Right, for the company that everyone I've spoken to says, hey, that is a ridiculous offer. No way. So, okay, I think as Bitfarm shareholders, right, hey, we all agree that, okay, the idea that $2.30 a share is a legitimate offer is just nonsensical. It's not even on the table, right? So then the question becomes, well, all right, so what are we going to do? What's Bitfarms going to do as a company to really kind of start not only meeting expectations, but potentially exceeding expectations? And I think that's something that was alluded to in this most recent conference call, right? Bitfarms conference call, where the idea is, hey, we want to make sure as a company that we're not sort of playing from our back heels, so to speak, right? And having to say, hey, I'm sorry, it's delayed, give us another quarter, that kind of thing. But instead, we want to be, right, a company that's hitting our targets on time, every time, and in fact, sometimes even exceeding those targets. So, if you're somebody, and there's quite a number of you who have been in Bitfarms for a while, I get how there's a profound sense of frustration and disappointment with the stock price. I get that. I viscerally get what that feels like. I really do. And, you can check out my, 300, 400 some odd previous broadcasts that pertain to Stronghold Digital Mining for proof of that. I know what it's like to be frustrated with the performance of a company's stock price. I think, though, that at this juncture, Bitfarms is unlikely to get too dramatically cheaper than more or less where we're at right now. Okay. Hey, could it go down to $1.50 a share? Can it go down to $1 a share? Well, I mean, look if there's an announcement that there's a tsunami of dilution incoming, right, to help fund all kinds of projects, well, hey, that's a risk. But to the extent, right, that, hey, dilution is going to be kept to a relative minimum, which is, again, these are one of these unknowns. I do think that it would be surprising as hell to see Bitfarms as low as, say, like $1.50, or anywhere below that, absent something really, really significant and severe pertaining specifically to Bitfarms, or, heaven forbid, a mushroom cloud over Europe, right? Something like that. So I don't know that we're going to see the price of Bitfarms go dramatically lower from generally the area we're in now, given the fact that Bitcoin is like surging ahead, closing in on $100,000 a coin, right? That ultimately, and look, if hash prices improve, I think we're going to start to see, hopefully, right, a bit of an uplift. But as I've alluded to on multiple occasions, there's only so much investment capital to go around, right? So if somebody's looking at a variety of different ways to gain exposure to Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin hopefully going up and continuing to go up, what's the compelling argument for Bitfarms over Marathon or over CleanSpark or over the the ETF, right? Say like IBIT or a long-dated call option on IBIT. So that's why I'm going to agree wholeheartedly with, and there's a number of you who are quite emphatic that Bitfarms needs to, and this is, I think, one of the phrases I read, it's not my phrase, in so many words, hey, you got to get their act together, start hitting operational targets. Easier said than done. I get that too. But really start delivering and really start to build confidence that, hey, this company is going to meet and hopefully exceed its targets going forward. Otherwise, again, this isn't me saying this, I'm just sort of relaying the feedback here. Otherwise, you know what? There are a lot of other potential attractive investment options to gain exposure to the price of Bitcoin going up, right? So that's the concern there, right? Bottom line. What's the bottom line? I don't think that Bitfarms gets dramatically cheaper from where we're at now, absent, as I said before, something specific to the company, something that really goes sideways and the stock really takes a beating. Absent some geopolitical issue, you can fill in the blank as to what that could be, that really kind of blows up and suddenly, hey, the markets generally are in decline. Or, of course, the price of Bitcoin, for whatever reason, nosediving. That's going to affect all the publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies, including Bitfarms. But so I think, we're kind of close to whatever the low is going to be. On the upside, yes, as somebody mentioned in comments, look at Wall Street oftentimes will throw some coverage analysts at a particular stock because they want to try to earn that investment banking business. I get that. But at the end of the day, right, hey, the coverage analyst, right, is I think doing a good faith job of making a good faith effort to come up with a legitimate stock price target that reflects what, in the opinion of the coverage analyst, is a more fair market value for the company. So that $4.43, which is the average consensus stock price target for Bitfarms, I think that number, hey, it represents a good faith effort to come up with a number that reflects the value of the company. Yes, it's true there, look at investment banks can be biased in various ways. Maybe, hey, the investment bank in question owns a bunch of shares of Bitfarms. They want to try to unload those shares. So, hey, of course, right? Hey, let's put a stock price target that's kind of high out there. Maybe we could unload our shares into that buying. I get it. But remember, if a person, hey, my vocation is as a coverage analyst, my reputation amongst my peers and with ultimately, right, my audience, right, the people that a coverage analyst is generally speaking to is the investing public, right? I mean, you don't want to necessarily find yourself on a hamster wheel of constantly putting out stock price targets that are just ridiculous, that are never really met or exceeded. I mean, you're going to kind of lose credibility as a coverage analyst. And I don't know that you're going to find a job on Wall Street, right, if you literally have no credibility amongst the investing public and your peers consider you to be something of a shill, so to speak, right, for whatever company you happen to be covering, because, hey, you always put some stock price target out there that's unrealistic, never gets met, never gets exceeded, and you seem to do that over and over again. People just stop listening. So bottom line, I see the $4.43 as being a good faith effort. I don't see it as being completely biased. I do see it as being, I think, a very realistic number that Bitfarms has the potential at least to hit if they start executing, if they start really kind of hitting their targets, right? Following through, regaining not outside investor confidence, but first and foremost, internal investor confidence, right? Those who own shares of Bitfarms have to stop selling shares of Bitfarms, right? They got to feel as if, hey, we're holding on to something that's going to be more valuable tomorrow than it is today. So you sort of slow down the selling pressure. And then as a result of hitting those targets and really performing well, you'll inevitably attract more attention and get more people interested in the stock. Speaking of which, if you are not subscribed to this channel, I'm going to ask you to kindly do so. If you like broadcasts like this, if you're somebody who owns shares of Bitfarms and you're like, it would kind of be nice to have somebody who, at least on occasion, is going to, try to put the best foot forward for the company and, hey, speak positively of, hey, what's legitimately positive about the company, then definitely like this video, subscribe, because, the more impact we collectively are able to have, I think we have the potential to shape the narrative about Bitfarms, which is an interesting thing, right? Instead of always having to rely on outside entities and sources and Wall Street, right? Hey, it's kind of nice to be able to wield some degree of influence, right? And say, hey, you know what? I think the market's getting it wrong. Bitfarms at $2.05 a share or whatever it's going to be bid down to doesn't make any sense, right? So if you like the type of messages that I put out there, if you think, hey, you know what? I have nothing to lose by this guy potentially putting Bitfarms' best foot forward sometimes, at least, right? Hopefully, assuming the company's doing relatively well, but it's just being ignored, then definitely subscribe and like this broadcast and my other broadcasts, because it actually helps us eventually reach more people who are interested in the topic of investing, of Bitcoin mining companies, and ultimately, it's in your best interest if you happen to own shares of Bitfarms, because I am going to be speaking quite a bit about Bitfarms. They did acquire, or at least are in the process of acquiring, my beloved Stronghold Digital Mining, and so for that reason, if for no other reason at all, I'm going to always be, myself, a little bit biased and inclined towards being a friend of Bitfarms. So with all of that said, let's stay positive, let's be great, subscribe and like, and we'll see each other again tomorrow.